Folks, in this video, I want to talk about automatic actions in GLPI and the different run modes. You may have seen this, you may have come across this already, um, and it's one of those. It's a little nuanced, so it's worth actually having some visuals to go along with it. This is one of the things that's fairly well documented in the GLPI documentation, and I will try to leave the documentation linked down below. Um, but if you haven't come across this, you probably will when you start setting up things like notifications or email receivers or recurring tickets. All of these things are kind of background processes that spin up periodically, do something in the background. It's not necessarily tied to UI activity, right? It's not someone going in through the UI and doing something at a specific time, though we'll kind of talk about the nuance around that in just a second. Um, it happens kind of in the background, which means that it isn't really a good fit for the PHP web server process. It needs to be its own background task. Um, and by default, GLPI doesn't force you to set all that up from scratch. But in order to get the full benefit of those background processes, there is some configuration that you need to do. I'm going to show you how to do that in this video and kind of give some context for why that's relevant. So first, I'm going to switch over to my demo environment and actually make this a little bit bigger. So right now I'm looking at setup and automatic actions. And this is basically all of the background tasks that happen. Let me actually move my face so you can see the whole thing. So here are, this isn't all of them. Oh, maybe it is all of them, 250 rows per page. There are only 41 automatic actions, and these are implemented by the core GLPI. I think plugins can add automatic actions, but these aren't things that you can like create through the UI. So these are kind of internal to the system. But with that being said, there is some configuration that you can uh, provide around them. And let's look at a couple that are you're likely to come across. Things like Mailgate, which is the description right here, retrieve email. So the email receivers. So if you set up receivers, incoming mail, this Mailgate automatic action is what processes that email. There's another one called notifications, which I'm not sure why I'm not seeing it. Uh, promise you. Oh, queue notification. Here we go. Send email or SMS notifications in the queue. So if you look at the if you've set up notifications or if you go over to administration and you use the notification or you see things in the notification queue, if things aren't sending out, it's because this queue notification background job, automatic action, isn't running. And you can see on this screen, you can see the last time it run. You can see mine are running, and I think this is actually today. So this ran relatively recently. I'm not using this system extensively, so it didn't actually send anything out, but it still ran, and you can see um, that this last run date is relatively updated. Similarly, we have something called recurring tickets, recurrent items, create a recurring ticket with changes. So if you've gone over to assistance and recurring tickets, and I think it also handles recurring changes as well. If you have something set up here, that's what this background job is for. Now, let's actually jump into this one and see some of the different options that we have. Um, First off, you see the normal logs and historical tabs. If you go to logs, you can actually see every single time it's run, 139 times. So this is run quite a bit. Um, and you can see things like run frequency. This is how often is it going to run? Unsurprising. Um, Now, you will see in just a second when we actually configure the background side of this, you'll see that we configure the kind of the job runner to run every single minute. But that doesn't mean that all of the background, the automatic actions are going to be run every minute. These are only going to be run with the specific run frequency. And there are actually other restrictions so that you don't have too many things running in the same minute, and it kind of queues things up if there are a bunch of jobs that are all supposed to fire at the same time. It's actually pretty sophisticated and kind of complicated, but in general, if you say something is going to run once every hour, it is going to run once every hour, every hour on the hour, that sort of thing. If you say something is going to run every minute, it may or may not. And in general, it's not recommended to have a whole bunch of stuff running uh, every single minute because it'll just kind of clog everything up. Too much stuff will be trying to compete for all the same resources. You know. All right. So status, you have disabled or scheduled. So if you just don't want the recurring uh, action, the recurrent items action to run ever, you can just disable it altogether. I'm going to keep it scheduled on this demo instance. Run mode, I'm actually going to come back to because it's going to segue into the next part of this video. Run period, this is basically the hours that this should run, so from 0 to 24. And this is the system time. So if your system's in UTC, it's midnight to midnight at the end of the day on that particular system clock. How long to store the logs? Unsurprising stuff. Now, with this particular one, recurrent items, the tickets themselves, the recurring tickets themselves, actually have their own calendars and working hours. So those are managed separately. So over here, when you create the recurring ticket, you set up when is the time frame when this particular ticket should be created. Should it only be done during working hours? Should it be done 24/7? What calendar should it operate on? That is different from this particular job, right? This job should probably run all the time, right? You don't want to be confused as to why, you may not have been using recurrent items outside of working hours, and then you add one and you're wondering why is this not running outside of working hours? Well, just keep the run period 0 to 24, all day, every day, so that if there's a recurrent item that needs to be created at that time, the job is already running. The job will pick it up and take care of it. Okay, run mode. There are two options here, and by default, when you install GLPI, all of them are set to GLPI. It's recommended to switch all of them to CLI. Now, what's the difference between the two? GLPI basically means that the automatic actions get run periodically throughout general usage of GLPI. So as you're clicking around the UI, GLPI periodically decides, oh, I should run automatic actions on this particular request or this particular click. And it will go queue them up and run some of them. That works okay. But think about UI usage. It's not consistent. It's especially not consistent after hours. And even during working hours, it might not be consistent. Everybody goes out to lunch and you don't want your notifications to stop going out just because no one is actively using the system. So for a production system, it is highly recommended. I would say without a doubt, like always change this to CLI. What CLI does is basically runs them in the background. There is an additional piece of configuration to complete the loop, but basically GLPI won't run these actions as part of general navigation throughout the app. It expects a cron task or a background task, a schedule task to be running that will handle all of these actions. Um, so in general, my recommendation is that you select all of them, actions, update, run mode, CLI. One of the first things you do when you set up a new system. Now, of course, as I mentioned, in order for them to actually be running, that CLI needs to be invoked periodically. So what we're going to do is set up a cron job. So I'm over here on my GLPI instance. Let's Try to bump the font size up here. All right. So uh, I'm going to add a cron task. Actually, I already have it on this system. So I'll show you how I've set that up. And again, the documentation will be left linked down below. Now, if you're not familiar with Linux at all, this is kind of an advanced topic. So I'm going to try to explain it as gently as possible. Cron is basically a scheduled task runner. It does have kind of an arcane syntax, but thankfully in the GLPI documentation, there is the exact string that you need to put in your cron tab. Now, the way to edit your cron tab, which is basically the configuration of what tasks should be running, is cron tab -E. Now, if I just do this, it's going to edit my user's cron tab. And it actually, by default, opened up in Nano, a text editor called Nano. If you are presented with a choice of what text editor to use, if you're not familiar with any of the other options, go with Nano. One of the nice things about Nano is that you get these uh, options down on the bottom. Now you can't click them, but the kind of the highlighted areas to the left of each word is the key combination to uh, to use to invoke that. So like uh, Control G, and that's what that up caret means is control. Control G is help. Control X is exit. Control R is read file. Um, Control O is write out. But if you make modifications and then do Control X, it does prompt you. Do you want to save your changes? And I think the options are Y or N for yes and no. You say Y, it saves them and exits. So I'm not going to make any changes here. I'm just going to exit. The reason being, this is my personal user's cron tab. That's not probably where I want to add the scheduled task for GLPI. Ideally, you would run GLPI as its own separate user. So you could use like the www data user on, I think that's a Debian and Ubuntu thing. I forget what um, the Red Hat world calls their web user. Um, and of course, you could also just create a brand new user for it. You could use a domain user. Um, it's recommended not to use root because root has permissions to the entire system, right? It's the administrative user. But as you'll see in a minute, I have set it up in the root cron tab. Basically, this is a demo system. I did not go through all of the security best practices to get this all set up. Um, I didn't want to use my own personal user because it's an individual user. It's not a system user. So the way to do that is sudo, and if you're going for a specific user, you sudo -u and then like www data and enter the cron tab. Since I'm just going to become root, I just need sudo, and then the command is the same, cron tab -e. I've already run this, and I've already picked the VI editor, so it's going to look a little bit different, and it's going to ask me for my password. That was my user's password. You don't have to enter the root user's password or the password of the user that you're trying to become. You enter your password to authenticate to sudo. And here we have VI showing the root cron tab. And here is the line. I'll actually highlight it with the mouse. Here is the line that you need to add to the cron tab. So 5 stars, and that basically means every minute of every hour, every day of the month, every day of the week, right? Minute, hour, day of month, day of week. So every minute, basically every time cron spins up to look for periodic jobs, it's going to run this particular job. And the command that it's going to run is php, the path to your GLPI instance, /front /cron.php. Now, if /front looks familiar, That's because most of the URLs that you use in GLPI, if you look at the address bar, most of them are slash front slash something. Um, and cron.php is just another one of those files in that directory. Uh, So this is the path to your GLPI instance. In my case, it's var www glpi. You might have it in, opt glpi or something like that. But whatever the path to your GLPI instance is, that's what you should put right here. So in my case, again, var www glpi gets me to the root of the GLPI installation, and then slash front slash cron.php. And this is an actual file on disk. So if you are in a bind and need to go looking for the file, where does this file live? You can find that file and then, print the current working directory, print the name of the file, and construct it. You can actually find this file on disk. It's not something magical, something elusive. It is an actual file on disk. If you can find the file on the disk and find the path to that file, that's the path that you put in here. But of course, it doesn't just go by itself because PHP files aren't intended to be run directly from a command line. And this is a command just like you would run, from the command line. So not that I would run it from this shell, um, but that's exactly what it is. So it has to be PHP and then the path to the PHP file. Right. So add that line to the cron tab. Again, I use the root cron tab, but it's not recommended to use the root cron tab. It's recommended to use a separate user, one that has specifically limited permissions. www data is common, though probably also not the best. You might want to create a separate GLPI user that has the bare minimum permissions. Um, you know, principle of least access, right? So, and then exit and save the cron tab, and cron will take it over from there. So once you have that line configured in the cron tab, you don't have to do anything else. The cron jobs will just start running, and you'll start seeing this last run date start getting updated for the various jobs. Now, you can also run jobs manually. So let me go over to Mailgate. I don't think I have anything set up here. You can actually just click this execute button, and it it should execute. If it doesn't, then you probably have something else misconfigured. Um, and I should note this does not go through the cron system. This just executes it directly in the in process. Um, and whatever that job is configured to do, it will just go do it. Um, so this can be a good way to test that other configuration is set up properly. But obviously you're not going to be pressing this execute button regularly on a daily basis, every hour or whatever. You really want that cron setup to be in place. So hopefully that gave you a bit more insight into how automatic actions are configured and how to set them up so that they just run from the command line and not through GLPI. Kind of, the more production ready setup. Again, this is all documented in the GLPI documentation, which I'll leave linked down below. I'll link specifically to the article that talks about this, or the page within the help that talks specifically about this. But if you have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, or there will also be links down in the description for our Discord server, which you can join and talk about GLPI. We also have a user group every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. It's not just GLPI, it's GLPI and some of the other products that we represent and build ourselves. So it's kind of a general Synapse software user group. But you're more than welcome to come and bring your GLPI questions to that users group. And if you want a little more hands-on uh, interactive support, you can also schedule time with me. Links down in the description below. Thank you for watching, and let me know if you have any questions. See you in the next one.